myself missing the South a little, so moved back to Atlanta, and have been with Google since April of last year on this amazing team, which is why I'm here today to talk to you a little bit, not only about my journey with Google, but as a recruiter, what we look for, what you might find helpful when you are starting the process of engaging with not only Google, but other technical companies as well. And then, of course, would love to answer any questions that you may have. Can't answer anything specifically around Google, so just wanted to throw that out there, but happy to help you with anything around personal branding or your LinkedIn page after we kind of go over that today. Cool. So as I mentioned before, I am from New Jersey. I lived there for quite some time, and was always working in retail. I did attend college and was going to, or I thought I wanted to become a teacher. And so I was going to school for education. And around maybe second semester in my first year, I realized that was not going to be the job for me. And so just went out into the workforce and just started to work, landed a couple of retail jobs, and really tried to spend that time thinking about what it was that I wanted from myself. I realized that everyone in my family were educators. So we had teachers and principals and superintendents. And so I just automatically thought that that was my calling as well. But it just wasn't clicking for me. But when I joined retail, I obviously loved fashion, I loved people. And so I realized that I might be able to have a career in leadership in retail for a little while. And then I was laid off. And never had I been laid off before, or never had gone without a job before. And so was super confused about what I wanted, how to market myself, and how do I transition now, right? How do I go from having only retail on my background to wanting something administrative and wanting something Monday through Friday? Which, as we know, a lot of people, they like to box us in. Once we have whatever is on our resume, they want to stick to that and never really allowing you to explore other opportunities. And so I am super fortunate that through my layoff, I stumbled across the world of staffing agencies and submitted my resume to a friend and who happened to know someone who worked with a company called Adecco. And that is where I started my recruiting career there. I started off with a few contract positions, and then a recruiter quit. And at the same time, my assignment ended. And so they asked me to come in and just answer a few phones, which I did. The following month, another recruiter quit. And because I had been there for so long, I had kind of learned the ins and outs of what it was to be a recruiter. And they asked me to just recruit until they found a replacement. But I ended up doing so well, they decided to keep me. And so that is really where my career as a recruiter has started. It has landed me some amazing opportunities with companies like Uber, Cirque du Soleil. I've worked with, I don't know if you all remember, but Uber Exchange Leasing was another client that I assisted, in addition to working with companies like Instacart, Amazon, and now Google for a second time. So while I am not technical, I can tell you a little bit about what it is like to market yourself, to transition out of one thing into another, if that's something that you're interested in. I'm also pretty good with navigating LinkedIn, which is what we're going to chat about today. Uh, I have a few notes, so if you see me looking off, that's why. I just wanted to make sure I touched a few things that I wanted to chat with you about. But as a recruiter, when we are looking at a potential candidate for a role, one thing that I tell people all the time is that your resume should really be your foot in the door. You might hear a lot of different things around cover pages or how many pages your resume should be. Honestly, you should be able to get everything that you need to say with regards to your career or your experience, whether it be internships or projects that you worked on. You want to try to get everything in on one page. Two is cool, but one is better. And I say one because when there are recruiters working for very high volume companies, uh, there's not a lot of time spent to search for what we're looking for. And so, what's important is once you kind of nail down the role that you're interested in, the position that you're looking for, you want to start to incorporate keywords into your resume. That's going to help drive traffic to whether it be your LinkedIn page or if you have your resume posted on like third-party sites like Monster or Indeed. So let's take it back just a notch. One thing that you want to start to do when you are exploring opportunities with companies, and this is whether it's tech or non-tech, is you want to review the job description, really go over it, understand what it is that's in that job description, and start to pull out keywords. Because honestly, when a recruiter is searching for candidates, all they're doing is keying in keywords of what that potential hiring manager is looking for or what skills are needed in the role. That is something that I have found to be extremely helpful because it helps eliminate fluff off of your resume and really helps narrow down exactly what recruiters are going to be looking for. And that's going to be facts and numbers. So, how you contributed to whatever it was, whether it was a project or your time out in the industry, and numbers. So if you generated 100% over to goal, or you hired 50% more than you were supposed to, and it was a great, made a big impact on a company, those are the kinds of things that you want to list on your resume. Uh, Another thing that I noticed that a lot of people do is they think the resume should house a lot of fluff. We think if we put a lot of um, kind of like words that we think people want to see, that sometimes will harm you more than doing good. So what you want to do is make sure that your resume again is reflecting not only the job description, but think really put yourself in the shoes of what someone would need in this a particular role. So if it's software engineering, obviously you're going to have great problem solving skills. So you want to start to pull on whatever responsibilities you had that will reflect whatever that characteristic is that would help someone in that particular role. I hope all this is making sense. If not, totally, I don't know if there's a chat box, but feel free to come off mute or in the chat if you have any questions. But I hope you're finding this helpful. Um, the second thing I would implore you to do is networking. And I know a lot of times, I mean, it sounds so super cliche, but it is so helpful to get close to people who are either in the roles that you are trying to get into or people who work with the companies that you're trying to get into. And this is not to say, you're building a phony relationship with someone, but getting close, really understanding a company's culture and understanding a role in particular outside of the job description will really help you begin to understand if there are certain certifications that you should take that might help you with getting more visibility to your profile, or finding out what someone else did and not recreating the wheel, right? So if someone that you spoke to is in the role that you're in and they've done A, B, C, D to get to where they are, stay close to them and figure out what it is that they did and don't recreate the wheel. Just, I don't want to say copy them, but that's how you get a little bit further as well. I mean, if someone's already done it and they're successful in the role, you definitely want to jump in. Do you think? Yes. So referrals are super helpful, and this is and not only at Google, but a lot of companies will ask you if you have anyone that you know that works there. What referrals are great, but you want to make sure that your referral can speak to your work, not necessarily like how you are on a Saturday afternoon, because they'll probably say you're super nice and fun to be around. But when we're looking for referrals, you really want someone who can speak to your work, someone that you've collaborated with, maybe someone that you've solved a problem with. And so keep that in mind when you're thinking about who you want to refer you. That was a great question. Um, Cool. Any questions so far about resume content? I want to talk to you a little bit about LinkedIn and really helping your brand stand out there, but didn't want to move past the resume um, chat if anyone else had a question around that. Cool. Cool. Okay. So, one thing I really love about LinkedIn, LinkedIn has been amazing to me in particular. Every job that I've gotten through LinkedIn. I've never applied to a role. Every time a recruiter has reached out to me, it has been through LinkedIn, which is why I speak so highly of it. One thing that you want to do is think of LinkedIn as more than just a space for applying to jobs or, simply just networking, right? You really want to think of it as an extension of your portfolio. So for instance, if your resume has all of the facts and data around where you've contributed to projects and any work that you've done in the industry, your LinkedIn page should be an extension of your resume that now you can add more value to it. So any groups that you're a part of, make sure they're added in there. Any certifications that you've gotten while in school, add that onto your LinkedIn page as well. Now, of course, all this should be on your resume too. But if you're ever out at a networking event, of course, you don't have your resume on hand with you. You can easily direct someone to your LinkedIn page and they can get everything there. It is totally fine not to have a picture. I know a lot of people feel 50-50 about that. My suggestion is put one up there. And it doesn't have to be, the typical one where we're in a suit and we're kind of just waiting for our first corporate moment. I tell people to have fun on LinkedIn. That picture should have a little bit of personality if you want, right? But it just, again, is an extension of your resume. It helps recruiters understand who you are. List some of the things that you love. We want to see more of what you do outside of work, right? So if it's kayaking, or if you have a dog, or maybe you are trying to eat a donut in every, all 50 states, like whatever is fun about you, don't be afraid to list that on your LinkedIn page as well. That's super helpful. And it also allows your recruiter to have somewhat of an icebreaker moment with you, right? So when they're sending out a message, it's not just, hey, love your profile, would love to know if you're interested in this position. It, I think a better approach at that point is, hey, I'm trying to eat a donut in all 50 states too. How super cool, we share the same hobby, right? So now you're connecting with your recruiter's connecting with you, but this also helps them understand more about what you're looking for, more about what drives you. That way they're also aligning you to the right positions too. Okay. Um, Another thing about LinkedIn that I want to share is it's so super important to engage. And I know we've seen this across all social media platforms. If you want more visibility, if you want more engagement, you have to be active, right? So, what I tell people all the time, don't overthink it. Post one article a week or post one post a week. Just don't look at mine, 'cause I've been busy, so I haven't done it, but this is super helpful. um, but one thing for me is there's a small section on the right hand corner in LinkedIn when you're logged in that will have a series of like the top 5 top topics that people are talking about. If one of them piques your interest, just repost that and ask people what their thoughts are. Or maybe you spent a weekend, studying in a cabin and you feel super refreshed. Like, don't be afraid to let people in on who you are outside of work. But this will also help build a network, because one thing is for sure, it is not about what you know, it's always about who you know. And a lot of times, you could be one person away from your next job or your next opportunity. So you always want to make sure that you're ready if and when that opportunity makes itself available to you. Um, any questions about LinkedIn at all, or standing out? Okay, cool. Another thing I wanted to share too, because I think um, a lot of times when we're thinking about personal branding and we're thinking about, especially when you're applying to internships or applying to, your first role with a company, you really want your personal branding to not only reflect, and it doesn't necessarily have to be it's who you are, but it's also the feeling that you invoke when you walk into a room or when someone lands on your LinkedIn page. For instance, if you head over to my LinkedIn page, I specifically talk about, I call myself the corporate cousin. And so it is really a space where people feel safe. I want them to feel that it's okay not to be okay sometimes, right? Especially working in a corporate setting, or taking the time to have work-life balance is super important. So mental health is a big thing on my page. And so I talk about all of that there. And that's the feeling I hope that people feel once they land over there. Oh, thanks. And so I usually cover things that I, deal with. I also have a podcast. So I talk about a lot of things to help people get through. Ooh, yes. So a little bit of both. Mm. Great questions. Okay. So, with regards to looking at LinkedIn versus a different site, I can tell you that I know for me personally, I look at everything, especially since I'm also a SWE recruiter. I don't know what I'm looking at with the code, but if there's a GitHub link, sometimes that is shown to a potential hiring manager as well. So if you do have those links, having them updated and available is always going to be helpful. LinkedIn is great. A lot of recruiters use that as their sourcing technique. Many of them do. So before they even head over to anything like Monster or Indeed, LinkedIn is usually the first place where a lot of recruiters go, especially for these kinds of roles. So I just want to be clear about that too, because that does vary. But a lot of our technical candidates are on LinkedIn. And so, yes, I think it is super helpful to answer both of your questions. Having a LinkedIn account is I think it's imperative, to be honest with you. There are also really cool groups that you can join on LinkedIn. Some of them are ran by recruiters that are hiring for positions. Others are, ran by computer science enthusiasts. So then that way you're networking there as well. So I really do think LinkedIn is a great place for anyone to really kind of create this portfolio that you can share with others. But also, if a recruiter is searching, they're able to find you as well. Really great questions. Cool. Hold on, I had one thing. Yes, I wanted to talk to you a little bit also about, this is a competitive market, obviously. And so I wanted to talk a little bit, and this is more of like a Jennifer thing, right? Because there are times when I have to give someone a call and, it's not the best news where they're not able to move forward. Um, and I guess I just want to make sure that I encourage you to know that no matter what happens as you begin, whether you're starting your career in the industry or you've been in it now for a little while, I think it is so, so, so important for you to remember that you are more than, computer science and coding, right? You are not only incredibly smart, but driven and motivated. So, whatever it is that you apply to, if it doesn't go the way that you intentionally wanted it to, or, it didn't go as planned, my best advice to you is to know that whatever's next is what was meant to be for you. And I find such liberation in everything that I do when I know if something doesn't go the way that I plan it to. Of course I'm human. So if it's something that I really wanted, sure, I'll have a moment. But I think it's so, so, so important to remember that everything that has your name on it will find you. And so as you begin to embark on interviewing or the studying that you have to do, just know that in the long run, everything that is meant for you will come your way. And so just wanted to share that with you, because I know I speak with a lot of candidates who, are under pressure with getting through school. You're studying, you're still trying to have a life too, but then you have your future ahead of you that you're thinking about. And so I just wanted to make sure I told you to stay encouraged as you begin this process, and would love to see if there's anything that I can share with you that will help you as well if you have it. Cool.
So I had a
Excellent.
question. So
Yes. Hi.
as a recruiter, which do you put more emphasis or value? Like, I guess the educational aspect, or projects like for software. Let's
Mm-hmm.
say someone has a master's or some PhD level, and then another person just has a bachelor's and some projects. Which one do you think has an upper edge?
It's a really great question.
Education
So,
or side projects?
so this I'm going to answer because I can only speak for like where I am today, and I can tell you that we look at everything. So one that doesn't necessarily have a leg up over another, because of how our interview process is. It really comes down to coding, how you code, how you communicate, how you problem solve. And so you could have someone with a PhD and maybe less projects not do well in coding, but have someone who maybe they don't have a degree and they're self taught and they are doing better. It literally is so fair in that manner, is because it doesn't matter what you're coming to the table with, because at the end of the day, everyone needs to be able to have good clean code and communicate clearly. And again, I can only speak for Google. Other companies, there might be a situation where holding a higher degree is better. In our case, we really, if you can code, we're looking at you. So, and that's one thing that I love about our process, is that it's so. That was one thing that I had to grapple with. Now, obviously, I'm not a software engineer, right? But I don't have a degree, and so that was always in the back of my mind when I was competing with, and I say competing very loosely, because there was head count, but when you're up against someone who holds a degree in HR, or maybe they definitely have something, a leg up on me. I think one thing that I have found super important is that the fundamentals of recruiting, or in this case, fundamentals of being a software engineer, are going to be the same whether you hold a bachelor's, master's, or PhD. And so I think understanding, as I mentioned before too, that's where understanding the culture of the company comes in. What are you looking for? Does leveling matter? Because sometimes that's where the difference between someone who's holding a PhD versus a master's may come in, right? So are you okay with maybe starting entry level and working your way up? And so all of those factors are taken into consideration, and so finding out what it is that you really want, what's important to you, what's going to help you make your offer decision, and then approaching, and again, I can only speak about Google, but approaching our interview, with the understanding of basic computer science fundamentals, and doing the studying and doing the work beforehand, is a good thing. And usually that's one thing I just love about our process there, is that everyone is going to be looked at based on that code. Yes. Yes. Okay. So the question is, which factors play a major role in, oh, you're welcome, Brian. Playing a major role in shortlisting of candidates from the large volume of applications. So when you are applying to a role with us here at Google as a campus candidate, you will have to submit a coding sample. So that is really the first part of the process, right? So if you get through that process, then at that point, a sourcer will reach out to you to get you started in the process. And that's really how, I guess, the difference between someone proceeding forward and someone not, which is, again, another thing I love about it, is that literally everyone starts out with a fair shot, right? There's not like anyone coming in with a leg up. Everyone goes through the same process. And so for us, that is the very first thing every candidate does when they're applying to one of our campus roles. And so that is kind of where you start to see the difference between, the numbers kind of go down a little bit. And then from there, everyone, if you pass, is sent to a recruiter. Um, Now, with other companies, I can tell you this: if you do not have industry experience, right, but you only have projects or internships that you've been a part of, you want to make sure that you're being extremely detailed in how you contributed to whatever project that you were working on. So, a lot of times people will say, I'm making this up, but let's say I had to build a building, right? If you said, worked on a team and built a 20-story building in 2 months versus 4, very general statement. If I were looking at your resume, I would naturally assume that's what you did, right? What you want to make sure that you're doing on your resume, and this is going to help you stand out as well, is be specific about what you did to contribute to whatever the project was or whatever it is that you were working on. So if you were a part of a project that built a 20-story building, instead of putting, what everyone did, you can specifically say, was in charge of ordering all supplies for a 20-story building, managed a team of 10 people, and was acting project manager, ensuring everything finished, in 2 months versus 4. So you see how I got a bit more specific about what I did. So now whoever's reading my resume gets a nice scope of, what it is that I can handle. So now I may have been in an IC role, but I wrote that I manage 10 people. I can do project management work. So all of that comes out in that one sentence. And that's how you want to approach every bullet point. Do not get too general, because at that point, we're not really learning about how you contribute. So keep that in mind. I hope that answered your question. Okay. The next question is, I heard recruiters are the ones who handle negotiations when it comes to hiring. How do you recommend university hires present themselves to get the best offer? And so that's actually a really good question. The answer is yes, but yes, we do handle all compensation conversations, but it's more from an advocacy standpoint, and that's where our negotiations come in, right? And so what you want to do with your recruiter is be honest about what it is that you're looking for. But I know certain companies, their offer is their offer if you don't have a competing offer in hand. So you want to find that information out as well. But know that a lot of companies are not, because what I see a lot of people think is that uh, the um, I see where a lot of people think that uh, cost of living is taken into account with your total compensation, and that's not always true. What is considered is what typically people are getting paid in the market, so you want to research that. And of course, take obviously whatever your threshold number is, because you still need to live, you still have bills to pay, you still want a social active life. So figure out what that number is after you understand what makes up a company's total compensation. Everybody has a number, and I think one of the things that makes negotiating and advocating for candidates a little difficult is when the poker face comes on and you don't communicate what it is that you're looking for. It actually adds a lot of time onto the negotiation process, unless you're upfront with your recruiter from the very beginning. Because at that point, if they already understand your expectations, then they already know how to approach the compensation team and trying to get you more than what you're asking for, which is usually the goal. Um, and so they will always fight for you in that particular stage. It's just easier when candidates are more upfront about what it is that they're looking for. I hope they answered your question. It was good. Does the hassle of requiring H-1B sponsorship affect the chances of a candidate? Absolutely not. Not at all. And again, I think this is another situation where you just want to be upfront with your recruiter. If you need sponsorship, that way they are aware of any deadlines that they need to be on top of, or if they need to loop in a separate team to assist you. You just always want to be transparent and honest and do it as early as possible, just in case there is a slight delay or if things need to be pushed back a little bit. You just want to make sure you're communicating that with your recruiter. But it definitely doesn't affect um, your chance of going through a process, as long as everything with timing is in line. You're so welcome. These are great questions. The next one is, what is the biggest mistake that you believe candidates make during the recruiting process that can easily be avoided? The first thing is not being honest about your timeline. So, for instance, Google's timeline after you complete the interview process is anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. It is a lengthy process. And I think a lot of times that I've seen candidates will kind of harbor news that they have a pending offer deadline or they need a decision by a certain time, and they don't tell the recruiter that information up front. And so what happens is, once you're 1 week away from the deadline, then there's a lot of like frantic scrambling happening, which is never good, right? And so I think that's the first mistake. And it's not even just about deadlines; it's just being transparent. And that's one thing that I strive to do, is really to change the relationship between recruiters and their candidates and clients. Is to make sure that it is a transparent and open communication throughout the entire process. Because I think, having been on both sides of it, I understand what it feels like to be waiting on feedback or to not know what I'm doing with regards to next steps. And so I try to keep that in the back of my mind when I'm working with anyone. But I also tell candidates the same thing, right? Like it's a two-way street. So I'll keep you posted with everything on my side. But I do find a lot of candidates harbor information for fear that this they might ruin their chances of getting through a process or maybe they'll talk themselves out of an opportunity, and you never want to do that. Just being honest with your recruiter will help clarify a lot of things on your end too. You're welcome. Glad it was helpful. Yes. Okay, so before another question, before the interview, one, research the market value of the position based on location. Yes. Two, create a monthly budget to determine a realistic salary range, evaluate the cost of living, and decide if the company is worth your time. That I work with too, you know, um, this also helps you. I think sometimes, like once you get in your mind what your non-negotiables are, what's if a company says to you, "Hey, I understand you live in California, but the only openings we have right now are in Chicago," you know, is that something you'd be okay with? And so, really, kind of figuring out what it is that you want, being very clear on that. What's the non-negotiable? Where will you flex a little bit? Are all things that are super important to start to think about now. Because as you progress through interview processes and speaking with recruiters, it'll be so much easier for you to then make a decision at the end of the day, right? Because then you can kind of go down your list of pros and cons. And if a company has more cons than pros, then you'll know that that's not the place for you. Another thing, I feel like I'm rambling, but I just had another thought that I wanted to share. Because the kind of going back to the question of biggest mistakes that I see candidates make, it's not necessarily a mistake that can't be fixed, but um, I'm not oblivious that I worked at one of the coolest places, and I know a lot of people want to be at Google. Um, but I think it's also super important to understand that sometimes you might have to start somewhere else before you land at Google, or maybe you start with maybe if the opportunity doesn't present itself now, it doesn't mean that it'll never happen. And I think a lot of people will find themselves becoming discouraged or thinking that maybe something they did wrong. And sometimes I promise you it comes down to timing. I failed to share this in the beginning, but I actually interviewed with Google 3 times. The first time was for a full-time position. I thought I did amazing on my interview. I called my mom and I'm just like, I got it. There's no way they're going to turn me down. And they turned me down the first time. The second time I interviewed, I did pass the interview, but I came in as a contractor. This third time I interviewed, I was able to come in as a full time employee. And when I sat back and reflected on my 6 year journey, 'cause that's really how long it was, I, I'm such a better Googler now than I would have been had I got in the first time. Because I had to work at Uber, I had to work with Cirque du Soleil, I had to work with Instacart and Amazon to kind of build all of these skills that have now made me a much better recruiter. Like I know now why I I use this word very loosely, but why I failed my first interview, because the lack of preparation, walking into that interview thinking I knew everything, they were all things that I don't know everything, and I think that my approach this time was much more humble. But all of my experiences helped build me into a much better recruiter, which I think I was able to execute during my interview process. So I said all that to say, don't be discouraged if your plans don't go the way that you wanted them to. Sometimes you're just being redirected, and then get setting ourselves up for again what was supposed to be for us. Um, Yes. Okay. The interview process for the software engineer early career position in Google. So, if you are considered a campus candidate, the process would be, and that's usually someone who has graduated under a year or is currently in school in less than 1 year of industry experience. The process there, you would submit a coding sample and a survey. And at that point, it's reviewed. And if we do get the thumbs up to move forward, at that point, you'll start what's called our virtual on site process. And then you'll kind of go through the process from there. If you are considered an industry candidate, which is someone who's been in the industry a little over 2 years or more, and again, this is all kind of factored in once you apply. Someone reviews all this information to make sure that we are setting you up for success. But if you go through the process as an industry candidate, then at that point you will have a technical phone screen first, which is usually 45 minutes. And then if you pass the technical phone screen, you'll have your virtual on sites, which is a pretty full day. You're looking at about 6 hours, 5 interviews. Hmm. Thank you. I couldn't give up on my dream, I had to be at Google. Um, it is a part of the, yeah, it is. And I think that that's one thing I've learned. I used to take everything so personally if I didn't get a job or a promotion or whatever the case may be. And it wasn't until I started really owning my role in my career, understanding what it is that I want and going on after only that. But also understanding that you can make an impact at any point in your career, right? You don't have to lead a team to make an impact. You don't have to work at Google or Amazon or Facebook to work. Of course, we would love you here, but you're powerful anywhere, and you can make an impact anywhere. And so I think that that's one thing I try to stress to a lot of people. It's just once you figure out what it is that you want, it literally is smooth. I was gonna say smooth sailing. I mean, you'll have a few bumps because that's just life, but um, it helps you get clear on your goals and what you want for sure. Cool. It's really great questions. Thank you. Um, any other questions? Anything I can answer for anyone? Ooh, okay. I really hope you all found something I mentioned helpful. Um, I know that our rec for should be open toward the end of August, I believe. And so I know that you have my information. So please feel free to reach out, connect on LinkedIn. Yes, please. Yes. Yep. Please do. And then, you know, if there's questions that you have, or if there's ever anything I can help you with, just let me know. And then hopefully, if you do decide to apply to any roles here at Google, you'll land on my desk and then we can kind of work together for sure. Yes. So the question is, does Google have rolling applications or is there a certain time to apply? So if you are a campus candidate, that application will typically open toward the end of August, early September. And that's when you want to apply. Usually, I think there's like an announcement the week before. So you want to check LinkedIn. If you're following me there, I usually will make an announcement too. And then if you're considered an industry candidate, I think you'll always find that. And it's usually early career software engineer posted on our website. Yeah, that's a good one. Perfect. And oh, one other tip that I just thought about too. One thing I noticed too is a lot of people is, and don't get me wrong, this is super annoying. If there's ever a new project or anything new that you're working on, you want to make sure that you're updating your resume and your LinkedIn page. Having the most updated information is super, super helpful too, because again, it will help show growth that you may have, if you had one project 3 months ago, now you're working on something different now, put that on up there. But also, it just helps the recruiter understand the scope of work that you've been doing, but also that you've been staying on top of things and staying very relevant in an industry that is forever changing. So anything that you're doing to help yourself stand out, make sure you list that information. It's helpful. Cool. The question is, how important is a referral? You know, I think that they're definitely helpful, right? I think that anyone that can speak to your work professionally, that is currently working at the company that you're interested in. They understand the culture, so they're going to be able to speak to why you would be a great hire. But I will also tell you that uh, you know, they're not the end all be all either. They're just helpful to have, which is where that networking comes in. So, you want to start to build your network now. And it doesn't, again, I want to make sure I'm really clear. We're not talking about phony building relationships, right? Like connect with someone who really has similar interests as you. It'll make the conversation much easier, um, and the approach as well. Um, Ooh, yeah, this is good. Okay, so if you can get a referral, super helpful from my experience. It's how I got my first. Yeah, I agree with you. Sometimes they can be what pushes you over, to be honest with you, too. So if you have one, don't ever be afraid to share the name. I agree. Does the coding interview and behavior interview have the same weight? The answer is yes and no. Um, Obviously, when your recruiter is reviewing your feedback, they're looking at everything. But because your position is a technical position, we're really going to be honing in on the coding, um, that day, and that's really with any company. But both, I wouldn't tell you that one. It's not that one weighs more than the other when we're evaluating the entire day, but like if you're a super good person but you can't code, that part, and you're applying to a technical position, then I think, at that point, unfortunately, I don't think that there's much that you could fight for there, if that makes sense. But if it's the other way around, that might be a different story. But just know that your recruiter, and this is at any company, they are looking at your entire day. So they want to see how you interviewed not only technically, but during your behavioral interview. And another thing that you want to kind of remember too is that if it's the behavioral interview, nothing technical during that time. And that's at any company. You want to really hone in on your soft skills during that time. So you want to kind of stay away from anything technical, because you're going to be dealing, having plenty of technical interviews. So if you're in a non-technical interview, really hone in on times when you had to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. Anytime you've had to like challenge the status quo, or uh, think outside of the box. Like those are the kinds of things you want to think about for your non-technical interviews. Okay, you're so welcome. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. Um, okay, so if you're okay, this is actually a really good question. The question is, the application was denied, and I'm wondering what I can do to change on my resume to get it, highlight any skills, and then what's missing on the resume. So I obviously haven't looked at it, but I will tell you this. Um, the first thing the human side of me wants to tell you, don't automatically think it was you, right? Sometimes it's not you. It could really be timing. It could be the rec was filled. It could be a multitude of things. However, I will tell you to take a look at your resume. Make sure that you're not just plugging in very general bullet points, right? We all know what a software engineering intern is doing, right? You're working on projects, but like dig deep. What kind of project? What's the scalability of the project? How many people worked on the project? How long have you been working on a project? So really try to hone in on very specific data points of what you contributed. So you want to make sure that's on your resume. But also, this was something I mentioned earlier. If there's a job description that is posted, you want to make sure you're pulling some keywords out of there. So if they're saying, I'm making this up, but if in the job description, APIs is listed, you want to make sure if you worked now, not if you didn't, but if you've worked with APIs before on a project or at work, make sure APIs is also included in your resume, right? because then at that point it matches a keyword in the job description, which is going to allow more visibility to your profile and your resume. So that's why I said really kind of hone in on what it is that you're applying for, and then whatever little keywords that are tied into the responsibilities of the role, incorporate that into your resume as well. And I promise it'll drive traffic to your profile. So that I couldn't answer with regards to after you did the coding test, only because I'm not technical. But I can tell you that it is reviewed by an engineer, so I'm not sure. But if you ever are, not moved forward in the process, you do have. I think you can reapply in 1 year to the same role. You can, Philip. The question is, are you able to email me your resume personally? You can definitely do that, but I can't promise how quickly I'll be able to take a look at it. But I am happy to do so if you you want someone to just take a look. I'm also doing a series on LinkedIn. I'm actually planning it now to be a webinar over the course of 2 days, completely free, where I will be doing things like this. So people will be able to submit their resumes. We'll kind of walk through them together. I can answer very specific questions around, how to help you stand out. So I can keep you all posted with that as well. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank y'all. I appreciate it. This was fun. Finally, I mean, Ricky only asked me back last year, so
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people, once we canceled that first meeting, like a lot of people were like, ah, like so disappointing. And it's like, ah, we were like really looking forward to it. So yeah, this has been a long time coming. So
oh, good. And I really hope that, something that I said today was helpful for you all. And again, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always dropping little notes and things there. And then look out for the webinar if you have specific questions. But you're more than welcome to send me your resume on LinkedIn, and I can take a look when I get a moment.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you so much
thank you.
for joining us. Yeah, very helpful information. I was just
Good.
absorbing everything, so
Oh,
I'll start
good.
applying it. Yeah.
And listen, I'm here. If you all need anything, and I have to be very honest with you. I was so super nervous when Ricky first reached out because I'm like, what am I going to say, um, to computer science students, and I don't even have a degree. Like that literally went through my head, and I'm just so grateful to have had this opportunity to speak with you today, and it's just so full, like a full circle moment for me that like I'm actually able to try to help someone else do what I couldn't do. So I want you to finish school,
Sure.
and if there's anything I can do to help you, then please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it was wonderful having you, and yeah, a lot of like useful and helpful information. Even, I'm sure for everyone here can agree on that. So yeah, thank you.
You're so welcome. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jen.
Likewise.
Thank
All right.
thank you
You're
so much.
welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good one,
Bye.
everyone.